Hello everyone, welcome back to MQC Off-Broom. This is our first episode of this year. Yeah, we've got a new host. I'm returning. No Andres this semester, but we've got our new host Zach from BU.
Hello. They decided Andres wasn't dynamic enough and didn't have enough hot takes last year, so I'm here to really spice up the MQC discussion.
Whatever you say, sure. Obviously, we just had regionals this past weekend. Big tournament in Maryland, so we had to drive 7 hours to play every team in the league that we already play in Boston.
But at least notably, neither of our teams suffered any injuries at the tournament, so
just
big positive.
Just some small head injuries and ankle injuries that'll clear up for nationals. Yeah, we can dive straight in if we want to.
Yeah, okay, so we're gonna try to give a little recap of both the fall and regionals. Start with D2, then move on to D1.
Let's start with Middlebury regionals. I think they went 0-6 or maybe.
Yeah, I believe so. BU had the opportunity to ref one of their games. We had the opportunity to watch one of their games. Middlebury's is in the transition year.
It's a rebuild, and that's okay. No Jason Wu. I think he changed his major and he got really busy. So, I mean, that's fine.
Who knows? Maybe he'll be back at some point. But for now, that's a big loss for them. Still got Kate Petty. She's still playing great. Showed a lot of leadership at regionals. She showed a decent amount of patience at regionals with a very new team. It's a tough time when your first game with a bunch of new people is UVA. That was not a close game. They did manage to catch, which very, very good job by the seeker there. I was flag running, reffing for that, and very nice over-the-top grab. But other than that, this Middlebury team needs a lot of consistent reps. They need reps against teams closer to their own level. And I think they need to hit the ground running in practice. They need to practice hard. Team members have to buy in. I don't know what the coaching situation is like. I know they didn't have a coach for regionals. So either their veteran players might need to step up, or if they do have a coach, make sure the coach is at those practices to really get some real development going.
One thing I did love, because Emerson played them, Middlebury, is their ball movement. I think they brought in a lot of new players, even some who might have had their first games be regionals, but they do a good job of spreading the ball all the way around the diamond, or however they run their offense. So the ball movement looks pretty good. They have a really high ceiling, and I don't expect Middlebury to struggle. Not franchise.
A franchise is a good enough word.
Yeah,
college franchises.
A college franchise for very long. I think they'll work themselves back up the ladder eventually. Just right now, on paper, it looks a little rough. They've got some work to do, but I think from what I saw playing them, it'll pay off. I think.
I mean, Middlebury's one of the most winningest teams ever in Quadball history. That type of culture just doesn't really go away over a year. So I expect them to bounce back. They just need to really work on their execution and their really core functional skills, because they have so many new people.
Yeah, I kind of, if you want to take a blueprint, kind of almost Harvard-esque. I mean, Middlebury's coming off. They're defending D2 champions of the entire conference. And just like Harvard was last year, they graduated all their stars. So they obviously were going to have to take a step back, but that step back propels them forward.
Hey, we got a fun one now. Our very own Ryan Leary's Emerson team. Okay.
Just kind of like Middlebury, we're in the same boat a bit, except no championship to, hold over our heads. Graduated a lot of seniors. I mean, we saw in the fall, a lot of freshmen on our team, a lot of new faces, a lot of learners, a lot of people that are willing to stay and get better. And I think that, just like Middlebury, that's really important. That'll keep Emerson afloat until we, have new players that can take us to the top of D1 or D2.
Shout out to actually one of the newer Emerson players, maybe not fully new, Emery. Saw them at the Harvard practices, seeing them in games, a lot of really good growth there. Seeming like probably one of the new backbones of the team.
Yeah, she seems very excited to start in Quadball. She's very into the statistics and even planning games and stuff. So I think give time.
And she's looking like she's improving pretty quickly.
She scored 4 goals against Middlebury, her first goal, and then 3 more.
Damn. Okay.
So I mean, what a way to start your scoring career. Emerson, we have the pieces. They're just they're fresh, they're new.
Yeah, and you can see that in the game against BU. He kept it pretty close for a lot of that game. Maybe the final score looks a little bit further away than the game actually was, but it was a very competitive game.
Yeah, I actually did want to speak on that because, I mean, you look at our Instagram and you see 1 and 5 for the weekend, and that might tell one tale. But a lot of games were very close. Besides like the first Harvard game and our last game against UVM where I beat the whole game. Every game was very close. Even BU, I think the score was pretty close at 20 minutes. Yeah. Against Brown, it was 7-5 at 20 minutes. Middlebury, we got a win. It was very close the whole game against Triangle. So like, I mean, that can speak to like how well I play, and Amiri and Megan are returning superstars, I guess, but also how our new players have like bought in and really developed over the semester.
I do have a slightly more difficult question to ask.
Yeah,
and Emerson has this really interesting dynamic where you have Amiri, you have Megan, which you and Amiri both played MLQ, both very high level players. Megan played practice squad last year, played very well at practice squad last year for Forge. You have that top end power, and I wonder if the issue is in the final results, not necessarily the process. Is there a compatibility issue where like your top end players both really want the ball in your hands the whole time to make plays, or do you just think you just need to get your rookies up more? Do you think it's more of a compatibility thing, or
I don't know. I think kind of we have like 2 point guards almost. It can be difficult, and then we have a different style of point guarding. Absolutely. I want to shoot and drive and dish at the same time, and Amiri's a big driver, so like that can kind of look like awkwardness when it's like trying to put everything together, but it can also lead to, hey, I'm gonna lead the offense on this play, and I'm gonna go shoot, or I'm gonna try to look to drive and dish, and then the next play it's, Amiri can drive. So we can
give a good balance.
We can have a good balance. If we had a big team, it could almost be like a two-line situation, and then SOP we just like run in transition. But unfortunately, when you have 10 people on the roster,
that makes sense. That sounds like what BU does generally with our generally have like 2 pretty more experienced players and kind of build the lines around that.
Yeah, so I don't think it's a compatibility issue. I think
that
it's
makes
just
sense,
like
2 really good players both wanting the ball in their
different
hands.
style of play, not having every single piece available to make that style of play work.
It's good on Emerson. Okay, so UVM is the last team in our D2. I'm going to start with my out. I haven't played UVM really other than opener this semester, so I'm assuming you have a better perception of it. But from my outside view, looking at stats, looking at highlights I've seen, the like glimpses of the games I've seen, I see Jack Fortman playing a very, very, very strong chaser and keeper game, and I don't really see anything else. I think that their team really, really lives or dies on this one player, and he's very good, but I think it holds them back to an extent that they've kind of learned to play around him and trust him to do everything, and it hurts them in the end when they have to play make without him.
Yeah, I mean, of course Jack is their star. I mean, when you have a player on your team like that who just like steps up and leads the team, it can be hard to just not like sit back and let them do all the work. I don't know if I can speak much on that, but they do have a very well-rounded team. I kind of see this team as like Emerson 2 years ago when right before all our seniors graduated, where it's like everyone is at the right time, like has enough experience, but they're still like in D2 where it's like they can kind of beat everyone because they're in D2 and they're at the top of D2, but what does it look like when they play D1 teams? And I think they actually held their own against a lot of D1 teams. They're in a tough pool with Brown, Brandeis, Rutgers,
and Crucio,
and that's a tough one.
That's a very
pool.
Strong pool.
I don't think it's the pool of death because they didn't have to play UVA, but
and I believe they played Brown pretty well this weekend, which is very, very good on them. Shows that they've got that punching power in D1.
I don't know what their team looks like next year. I don't know who graduates, but if a team moves up and it's UVM, I think they're in position to like kind of be what Emerson was at last year when we moved it to D1, like stay with some teams, play really well against D1 teams, see what happens. Okay, we're gonna move into D1. So Zach has the
we have some great stat takers for the MQC, and shout out to Mark who compiled a big list of some statistics overviews that we're gonna go over. So right now, as the standings currently stand, BU's in number 1 in the MQC, followed by Harvard, then RPI, and then rounding out the D1 for MQC is Brandeis and then Brown. BU currently is up a difference of 590 goals. Harvard's at 280, then RPI is at 210. Follows pretty closely with the actual rankings, with Brandeis at -120 and Brown at -430. You kind of see this differentiation between the top 3 and the bottom 2 in D1, with BU, Harvard, and RPI being a little bit on a higher level, at least before this semester. we're going to get into
Yeah.
regionals, which changes a lot of things.
It's a little different, some teams at regionals.
Just a little bit different. But I think a lot of this is a good starting point. I think it kind of contextualizes where Brown is right now. They just came out of D2. Maybe they're struggling a little bit to keep up with D1, at least in the fall. I know they played teams a lot better this regionals than maybe the fall semester. And I'd say BU with those differentials looks like it was well above the pack. I'd say the games played out a lot more closely than the statistics might say.
Yeah, in my head, I think I have BU and Harvard at the top, just like running away with it, and then Brandeis and RPI kind of in that middle, and then Brown at the bottom. BU and Harvard are on a collision course for that D1 championship.
All right, maybe we start with Brown and we work our way up the chain. Brown, coming into this year, had a bunch of younger players who were showing like really high potential. We have Ottman, we have Satvik, Carson all played Forge. Karsten was a seeker on Forge's main squad. That's huge. Fibov, now coach, was part of the Forge environment as well. Will Richardson, part of the Forge environment, now a coach as well. So they did lose those people. They lost Will, they lost Tommy, but they have this like new core that we kind of really wanted to see what they were able to do in the MQC. Karsten has really showed out seeking. He's done a great job. I do think that they're like a year away. They're like a really star threat away from being a very big threat chasing wise.
Karsten needs like another Karsten to get that team going.
Absolutely. And I played with Karsten the whole summer with MLQ on the main squad, and you could see his progress the whole year. The thing is, though, he was really on that team to seek, and I think he played phenomenally. I would have loved to see him get more minutes in the chasing game just for some progression, but he's looking good in the chaser game. He's just not looking like that person who can warp the game in the chaser side. He can definitely warp it as a seeker, but they're still missing that like really like huge talent that pushes their team.
On Karsten, something I've noticed a lot with male chasers in specific is they kind of, if they're good at a few things chasing wise, like shooting and driving, they'll like almost pick one, but it's the wrong one, like to really focus on. I want to see more Karsten drive because I see him shoot a bit and he's a good shooter, but I feel like
he is so strong.
He needs to unlock that drive. Like Karsten is bigger than like almost everyone on the field. I think if he just like went downhill and jammed that ball onto the top hoop, like I don't think anyone can stop that.
I want to say Brown played a lot better at regionals than maybe we saw in the fall. Very good sign for the team, and we'll see what they do in the D1 relegation games. We'll get to Brandeis later. I still kind of like Brandeis for that, but I think it's going to be a lot more competitive than people think, especially after this regionals.
Yeah.
On to Brandeis. Brandeis is an interesting team for this because we just saw them go second in regionals. We're gonna kind of push that to the back of our minds and we're gonna talk about the fall first, and then we're gonna move on to regionals.
Yeah, something interesting I noticed. Both Brown and Brandeis played Emerson and in very close games. And I don't know what that means, to be honest, because playing Emerson with such a small roster, and it was on the same day too, we almost beat both of them. We held Brandeis scoreless for like 20 minutes of like game time. So I think Brandeis and Brown are in that boat of like at the bottom of D2, but have a lot to work up with because they have big, young rosters. So there's a lot of, just like Middlebury, but like differently, there's a really high ceiling for them, and they can be at the top of D1 eventually.
Yeah. And Brandeis is an interesting case study. They just graduated their whole starting line, their whole team. They had Andre Stowaway for the fall semester, which was a big loss as well. He was a very experienced chaser for them. Kind of left them with only a few names on the roster. They had Ryan Callahan, Matan Sports, Oren Weinstein, all played MLQ. Matan and Oren were practice squad. Ryan was a MLQ Forge main roster beater. And I think it showed a little bit more in the fall semester where they really only had these like big three people that you were really looking out for on the teams. And I think it showed a little bit in how their games played out. They had a very, very high turnover rate that fall semester. I think part of that is they were really relying on those very good players in like Oren and Matan to make on the chaser side, but maybe not at the level as like the other top players on other MQC teams. And they both had a decent amount of goals, but you could see it more in the turnovers. Matan had quite a few turnovers, Oren had quite a few turnovers, and then their younger chasers were just kind of getting targeted a little bit when they got the ball and were forced to make pretty difficult plays for like basically new players.
Yeah, I mean turnovers are like, they're not the worst because sometimes It just has to happen. I led the league in turnovers for that, and this is my second year in a row doing that. And sometimes you just can't do anything with the ball, and you have to turn it over.
I think crucially though, a lot of Brandeis' turnovers were fast break turnovers. Just losing the ball in the middle of the field.
The difference between turnovers and mistakes, I think, is big between the dividing two. I do think Matan and Oren really made names for themselves this past semester or fall semester. They were on the practice squad and really impressed me, and then showed that their improvement, their skills that they learned over the summer, and turned it into wins and really impressive play over the fall.
Yeah, absolutely. And then I think that it really shows out both their improvements and also just the culture of Brandeis, having all of these people getting big practices in with a lot of people, getting real good valuable practice minutes. Because they showed up to regionals, they looked a lot better. They
looked amazing at regionals. And I also just said with the return of Andres, big pickup, basically like a free agent signing in the middle of the season.
Especially when Ryan Callahan likes to go crazy and put every single dodgeball somewhere on the field on the ground.
Yeah.
Having just another big body, big physical chaser to run through people on offense. Scored them a lot of goals at regionals.
Yeah, and they played UVA well
right up until the
I wasn't able to watch it, but a
lot of discourse about that. I think we'll leave that to
the Reddit.
We'll leave that to the Reddit, to people either more experienced in it or more passionate about it than us.
Yeah.
But I do think it is telling how well they did at regionals. The perspective coming out of regionals is that, oh my God, Brandeis is back. Watch out, MQC. I'm not that high on them. I think they're very good. I think they have the opportunity to compete very well or possibly be favored against a lot of the top teams. I think they played Harvard pretty close in that semifinal game. I don't know if this final score showed it, but I was tabling that game, and you could see on both sides that some things swing one way or the other, and that game goes to Harvard. I think it's a little bit closer than maybe the reactions out of regionals would say. Possibly one of the most interesting teams up next in RPI. RPI has always operated with just the smallest roster you could technically have and still be a competitive team. They rely on their workhorses. They rely on Ben, Fothrop. They rely on their really strong, solid core with Isabel McCall, Justine Cross, all these very good, maybe not the star names, but very these high level core players. Aiden Whitaker looked great.
And something interesting about RPI is I swear every time you play them, one of those players that you mentioned is playing a different position.
Oh, I didn't know McCall was playing beater until this region.
Isabel can chase or beat at a high level, and then Ben just throws on the black headband, or someone else will start chasing, and you're that doesn't make sense in my head. I mean, it turns into them in the middle of the MQC, even at they don't have that many players.
And I think in the fall it hurt them a little bit more. I feel we saw in games get tired towards the end. I think teams with bigger depth pools like Harvard and BU were able to just grind them out, and they played Harvard very close a couple times. They played BU well. I don't think they ever really came terribly close in the fall to an upset. They were definitely kind of swimming in that middle of the pack in D1, but they did make a pretty good statement at regionals this year. Obviously, they beat BU, played a very good game against us. We'll get to some of the BU issues and why I think the game went that way a little bit more later. Noah Bennett, very good rookie, very athletic, very passionate about the game. Possibly not 100% there on the rules yet, but he's going to get there.
That happens.
That happens. You've seen one of our BU players, Aiden, in his first few games. Loved that jersey pull.
It took me a while to figure out that you can't push with two hands.
Yeah. But they look good. They looked very good at regionals. Ben looked on the top of his game. For a team with so few people, he looked fresh in the fourth game of that day, which was really impressive. Very good showing by RPI. I wouldn't be surprised if they take at least one game off Harvard in the upcoming the champs. I think they secured a D1 bid.
I think they got a D1 bid,
so,
and I wouldn't be surprised if they won a game against
I think they'll make some
team
noise
at
at nationals.
We want to move on to
All right.
Harvard.
Yeah,
next?
Harvard. Okay.
Harvard, I think, is such an interesting story.
It really is.
I think the biggest headline is David Chen is back.
David Chen is back,
but with a big question mark, because is he back? But then he's pretty back.
Yeah, we had the opportunity to play Harvard a lot of times. We've had the opportunity to practice against Harvard quite a few times. Harvard just consistently improves week to week, month to month, year to year. They went on that great nationals D1 run a couple years back. They graduated all their top players. People thought it was going to take them a while to get back, and now they're back in D1 nationals, looking pretty competitive. For the fall, I think it was a story of two halves. I think they had a bunch of these really good new chasers, Bruce, Toby, like big physical chasers who could like really make a difference on their offense, which they didn't have before that.
Yeah.
But I still think their chaser line was still a little bit inexperienced. They had turnovers that probably were a little unforced, just passing too close to other chasers, trying to run in when there wasn't an opportunity. They've got very good players. They have Kevin, Elisa, they're all like very, very high, almost star players, just like I think a step below like the really, really good players, but their real strong point is their beating. Their beating looks really, really good.
And obviously that's because of Max and Lulu on their coaching staff, and then even Ethan as their head coach. I mean, Harvard is where they are because that's who their coaching staff is, and that you can take a random rookie walking on across like the Harvard campus and they start playing quadball and they're going to be good because that coaching staff is excellent.
Harvard had a great fall. They beat us the first time we played. They ended up dropping 2 games in the same day against BU and Brandeis. Played a really like gritty game against BU and then had to play Brandeis basically back to back, which is never easy. It dropped them out of the first spot in MQC, but I think they're still very, very competitive. Even before this regionals, they were like a very, very threatening team.
I think they are a big threat, and I think they showed that at regionals. They looked very, very strong. I mean, they started their day, boat race against Emerson. They destroyed us, and then they kept that up throughout the day, and then day 2 also.
I will say, it got a little scary against Triangle in one of those games. Triangle had some interesting players that I don't think anyone in the MQC was ready for, but it shows their grit to really keep in that game, and they ended up winning it pretty comfortably.
Yeah, the Triangle edition of JMU was unforeseen.
For the many MQC teams that they happened to play.
And I mean, they showed how well they played. Shout out to them.
Harvard beat BU day 1, pretty close game. I think it was about 2 goals difference. Crushed BU day 2, about 200-point difference. And then they played a game that I think they could have won against Brandeis. I think still they run into the issue. They love their cuts on Harvard, especially when you got into a very set half court. It felt as though if their beaters didn't blow up a play for them, their chasers were having a little bit of trouble winning a one-on-one, creating some space to like make an open pass. A lot of their passes were a little forced into tight areas and got intercepted, which I think something that they can look forward to improve. And something that they very easily could improve going forward.
A lot of room for improvement in the Harvard team, but...
And also wanted to shout out Nathan, their beater. He was very good in the fall, but I think he took a really strong jump from the last time we saw him at regionals. He looked very, very good in those regional games.
Sometimes there's just like a click over the fall and like spring semesters where like real stars like start to just like understand the game more, and then that shows up in their play.
Now we are on to current number 1 standings in the MQC. That being BU, that's the team I'm on. You had a very good fall. Let's start there.
Great fall.
We had a ton of people coming off of summer teams. I happened to play on the Forge main roster. We had a bunch of Forge practice roster players, Evan, Molly, Zoe, HB. We had Martin Minor over in Cleveland playing for Rift main roster. A lot of momentum going into the fall.
Will White played on the Titans practice squad when
Will White
when he wasn't in
When
he wasn't in Africa, he showed up to a few practices.
He did indeed. He was indeed on the practice roster for Titans. We came into the fall. We were pretty confident. I think we expected to do very well this fall at the very least. I think it bore out pretty well. We had the lowest turnover rate of any team, highest goal differential, best points for, best points against. Our beaters played well. I think our highlight was more on the chaser side. Evan had a fantastic fall, top goal scorer, very high efficiency. Not to brag too much, I think I did pretty well myself. I had some pretty good assists. I was happy with the way I played. We had our additional playmakers. HB and Zoe were facilitating really well. We had great showings out of Ian, one of our younger players, Aiden Heyer, a new keeper. Henry Dingus, another very good keeper and seeker of ours, played very well, got a lot of important catches. It was a very strong fall. We always knew coming out of the fall that we were going to lose some people. We knew Evan and Will were going abroad. Knew Kyle was going abroad. We learned Henry was going abroad, going to his co-op a little bit late, which was unfortunate. And I think the theme of regionals, which we were hoping it wasn't going to be, there was a round robin planned that fell through, was learn how the team is going to play, missing a lot of very key pieces to the team.
Something I noticed to speak on the fall for you guys, when BU clicks. When Zach and Evan are going crazy and dunking and throwing up lobs, it looks majestic. But then on the flip side, when BU isn't clicking,
Absolutely.
it's very apparent. Like when they're missing Will and Evan.
Yeah.
Especially even like, I know we talked about it before, but like in the Emerson game, I felt like that's the only game I got to like obviously watch fully because I was playing in it. But it was apparent that there is no Will White on the field. There is no Evan on this field to drive through everybody. And even though you can rely on Zach for a lot of your goals and Molly to clean up the beater game, it's clear that something is missing. So like when BU is right. But when they're missing pieces, I'm still interested to see like how that gets like fixed.
Yeah.
And how you can
sure.
regroup and fight back when you're like back's against the wall or
absolutely.
when you're struggling a bit.
I think from my perspective of our regionals, I think the case study of what BU can look like right now at our best was our JMU triangle game. I think BU played really well in that. Very, very strong across the board, beaters and chasers. I think Emerson is a case in what it looks like when BU's a little tired and struggling.
Yeah, but you still showed a little bit of grit.
Yeah.
You didn't take your foot off the gas. You didn't let me play, even though I was playing very well, you didn't let me take control of the entire game.
Yeah, and Emerson played very well that game. BU didn't play our best game, but we played well enough to...
Yeah, and sometimes you aren't playing your best, but you still find a way to win. That shows what a good team are, how well coached you are.
I think the more telling games of the day, at least when we're looking forward to nationals, are probably the Harvard was a good game. It was close. It probably gone either way. I had a unfortunate brain fart towards the end of the game and made an unforced penalty that could have swung the game either way. I think most telling games probably RPI at the end. With our roster right now, especially if we don't know how the open bids are going to work, if we're in D1, even if we're in D2, those like third or fourth games of the day are where B's going to have to show that we have enough depth to get our starters a little bit of rest in those games to let someone else take a little bit of the load. I think we've got the ability. I think right now, when you're looking at BU, you have to see that they don't have the experience doing that right now. We don't have the experience without having me or an Evan or a Will on the field at all times. Which I think we can win in those situations. We haven't had enough games. We haven't had enough practice with that. And I think you can see that day too. For those who don't know, unfortunately, day one there was a little incident and I got a concussion. So day two, BU was playing down me, but also down another player, which was really big for the team because our rotation lines were already very tight, and I think it showed a little bit to a moderate bit. The Harvard game was about 50 to 250. It might be a little bit off the numbers. It was close to that. CWRU was a little closer, but it was still not the closest game. BU has to really expect a lot out of younger players that we haven't had to in the past. So it was not an expectation that a lot of our players went into the season thinking that they were going to have this like slightly bigger load placed on them, which we'll adapt to. But I think it's going to be a real test going forward this year.
That's really interesting.
That being said, we are going to win all of MQC champs, and then we're going to sweep nationals. So very, very excited for that.
Heard it here first. Watch out, Creighton? ?
Creighton, overconfidence is always the biggest liability.
That's what I said last year. I said we would beat Blue Jays. We didn't play them, so we'll never know. That wraps up regionals and a look back at the fall.
Thank you so much for tuning in for our first episodes. We're going to try to get them out a little bit more consistently, which means that all this semester. We had a little turnover in the fall, which is why they didn't end up coming out then. But please let us know if either we missed something or there's like a little bit more nuance to something that we'd love to hear about. Also let us know if there's anything you're interested in hearing us talk about. We've got a lot of stats for players. We've got a lot of insight we can ask people to come on, interview different teams. A lot of fun opportunities that we can have. Yeah,
looking ahead to, we have D1 relegation, D2 promotion, and then the D1 like championship bowl as a preview basically for nationals, which will be in California in like a month and a half.
And one more thing before we wrap up the episode. I'm sure I'll try to post these sometime before or after the episode comes out. But I in fact did have the better predictions for this regionals. You can go look at those as well. We're going to try to give the highlights of both of our predictions for that as well. All right, thank you so much. This is Off-Broom.
Thank you.
Getting back on Broom.